Do you ever remember the boring assignments back in school? Well, in this project, we make creative, engaging alternatives. Today's assignment. Detail a survival plan for a particular apocalyptic event of your choice, be it zombie outbreak, climate disaster, alien invasion, etc., and explain the necessary skills, allies, and resources. Content will be graded not only on preparedness, but on how interesting or unique the apocalyptic event is. I can see, yeah.
All-pocalypse.
The all-pocalypse?
The All-pocalypse.
Huh.
You have some explaining to do.
I certainly will. That is the point of this presentation. But hopefully I can tell a good story. The All-pocalypse. At first, no one noticed anything. Things changed. It took a second. Not like your traditional apocalypse. But then, the yearly deaths started dropping.
Oh,
This
no.
took me a while to make. I ripped this off the internet and then added stuff to it. At first, we thought it was just a return to normal after COVID. However, it became very apparent towards the end of 2025 that something was up. Just the elderly were affected. They weren't immortal, they just seemed to be dying less and less of old age. Cancer wasn't going away, illnesses weren't getting any better, but 60, 70, 80-year-olds, they were just kind of living, not dying as easily, outside of eventful things like car crashes, accidents. By the middle of 2026, world governments started to take notice. That was mostly because money was involved. They already had a replacement rate crisis in most countries, falling below the rate of 2. So they certainly were not prepared to continue to spend money on the elderly and have more and more of them survive. Now, the top of our inverted population pyramid was remaining large. So what do they do about it? Thanks to their quick actions, Social Security in the United States was changed to a sliding scale, starting kind of on the lower end at 65, encouraging older folks to get a part-time job so that they could continue to help contribute to the economy and not have to be paid for as much out of the pocket of the government and all those who are still employed. The sliding scale was just supposed to be temporary until, of course, the fountain of youth could be identified and gotten rid of. This, of course, would not take effect until 2028, 3 whole years from the beginning of this population crisis, just because it took them so long to get themselves into gear. Other world governments made different sweeping reforms to try and quell the issue. China and Russia started forcing their healthy elderly to go out and get jobs because they couldn't pay for them. After about 5 years, it became increasingly clear that it wasn't just the elderly who stopped aging. Many people who were chronically online started sharing pictures of themselves from 2025 versus 2030, showing how they hadn't seemed to age a day. At first, many thought it was AI, makeup, filters, but as they started scrolling through their own photo galleries, they found pictures of themselves, their family, and their friends that looked identical to how they looked now. The scientific community had, of course, been abuzz with hypotheses and predictions ever since the decline in elderly death started. But with the new possibility that this was affecting everyone, things were quite stirred up. Fortunately, a private think tank released a very important study. They'd been taking various samples of tissue, blood, bone of a group of elderly for 3 years and were helping advise world governments on what to do. In early 2029, however, they had decided to expand their scope to younger generations out of caution. Their study concluded that 100% of their test subjects stopped aging once they had reached matured, so around 25. And had they already passed that age, just remained at their current age. So, of course, when the study was released, it spread like wildfire. Countries immediately started closing their borders, some not even letting their own citizens back in. They had to deal with a population crisis of this scale, then all those mouths being abroad really started to add up. The rich started buying up supplies like it was no one's business. Many of them had always wanted to live forever. They just hadn't realized that meant needing to eat, stay warm, and keep their ass clean for potentially hundreds of years. World governments continued to clamp down hard. If they couldn't tell how old you were by just looking at you, then they needed another way. They began microchipping newborns without parental consent and opening clinics to get those who were born before this landmark discovery chipped as well. In time, it was illegal to not be visibly or electronically identifiable by year of birth, whether it be a tattoo, a piece of clothing, or a microchip. Christians and other religions called this the mark of the beast or some other thing. Governments started cracking down even harder as the population got out of control, instituting zero-child policies, forced sterilization, and yearly cullings across the globe. These cullings primarily consisted of the next year of marked people who reached the age of 70. So, as an example, in 2040, anyone marked as being born in 1970 would be killed. Many countries lost the trust of their populations, ruling by dictatorship instead of popular mandate. Things held together for a bit. For the next 10 years, the term prepper became mainstream. There were still large groups of people who trusted that the government would come up with a solution, of course, along with a much smaller group who believed the outright murder was the solution. But sales of generators, emergency food, and medical supplies went way up among the common consumer. By about 2040, it was official. There were more people against the government than for it. Many businesses had been shut years before, but now even the government couldn't get things like power plants or shipping industries to function and run on time. In a panic, the government made a rash decision. Cull 80% of people over the age of 40. Society was already shutting down. This way, there would at least be less mouths to feed. Things, of course, then fell apart. This event became known as the Great Death of 2042. As just about anyone who was microchipped and above the age of 40 was murdered by autonomous drone. These drones were also tasked with targeting anyone who they came across that weren't microchipped as defectors of the state, as they could be any age. As the government continued to fall apart, these drones continued on their search, automatically recharging via solar power and causing quite an issue for those who continued to press on for the human race. So, how do you survive this very unfortunate situation? Many survivalist groups did fortunately survive the Great Death, as they had successfully dodged being microchipped and fell off the grid many years before 2042. They, of course, needed all the basics: grow their own food, sterilize their own water, start making their own clothes. They had access to things like generators, but had to use them sparingly. In addition to the basics, there were two other extremely important things. One was a requirement, the other was a luxury, could almost be considered a requirement. Every community decided there needed to be a rule, colloquially known as the killing age. The age at which you should kill yourself or be killed by your community. Some older folks would be kept around for their wisdom to continue to advise their communities, but most agreed that when they hit the killing age, that it was indeed their time. Oftentimes when rival communities would clash, anyone who was captured and their age was properly identified would be killed if their age was above what their rival community thought was acceptable. Some thought, 70 was a good age. Others thought 80, 85. I mean, people were still young, able-bodied, but it just became a hassle with too many mouths to feed. If a community was able to get hold of some sort of EMP, they were more than set to protect themselves from roaming drones. This is, of course, a bit of a luxury, but it is highly desirable and has been the cause of fighting between many communities. It would be one of the main reasons that you would even consider interacting with someone else. These EMPs were able to take out drones and keep people safe. It was very important, especially if you had an EMP, you didn't really want to leave your home base to go out and search for luxuries or pillage other communities, because you were much safer at home. If you had an ill-fated encounter with a drone while you were out and about, you were more than likely to end up dead. So these were pretty crucial for a community to last a long time. Because if a drone flew by and you couldn't get rid of it, it could seriously damage your community. That's it. That's all I got. No outcome. Nothing else.
Pretty grim, Brian, but that was the point of the assignment, wasn't it?
It sure
Yes,
was.
very, very good. Any questions? Yes.
I have a
Hold on,
question.
stop streaming.
Basically, like the no child policy and like the Great Killing of 2042. I don't remember. Was that the entire global community, or was that just like the U.S.?
It kind of depended. The zero child policy was often mandated. They were kind of either or kind of things, right? The zero child policy was a mandate where in countries where they were letting people kind of continue to live, they're like, okay, well, if you guys aren't dying, then we just shouldn't be reproducing. We shouldn't be growing our population necessarily, because we have to be able to support those who are already here. The Great Death of 2042 and similar kind of yearly cullings were instituted in areas where they weren't controlling who was being born, but they thought, okay, we'll let people continue to have families, continue to create life, but we should essentially say, all right, we're going to put a hard limit on how long a human life should be. Hey guys.
Wouldn't it be the play to, as a citizen, get a birth date, like tattoo, of like 100 years in the future from now, and then hide that for the first 100 years.
Well, I mean, yeah, if you could pull that off, but before the government completely fell apart, there would have been regular check-ins of like, if you're like seen on the street by some enforcer, police officer, or military personnel, they would, over time, have been given the authority to pull you aside. Very dystopian dictatorship type stuff. Pull you aside, check you for a microchip, check you for tattoo, and if they saw that you were trying to game the system or were able to figure out that you were lying about your age, they would have had the authority to kill you on sight.
I would choose a birth year for which you could tattoo over the number, and it would increase over time.
Smart.
Turning a 6 into an 8.
Turning a 6 into an 8. Like that, but I'd have to do it over time, depending on like
drawing a line through the 0 to make it an 8.
yeah, that'd be right. I would make it. I would manufacture the first tattoo would be like not clear numbered enough to where you could add onto it later, and then if enough time passes, you can just put a 1 in front of all the other 4 numbers.
Oh, what? You're living for 10,000 years.
Well, 8,000 years.
That'd be
8,000 years,
that'd be
That would
pretty
be
impressive.
10,000 years.
That would be very impressive.
You can still die in other ways. You're not invincible. You're just
To
immortal.
choose a birth year to like right over the tattoo.
Can we talk about why it's so important to kill all of these people right away? Because, like, for example, China can exist with so many more people than we have. And I understand that like, with more old people, it kind of gets frustrating. But since people aren't becoming old, then wouldn't that mean that the economy could expand incredibly rapidly as we birth more people that just remain working age forever, like, indefinitely?
You're correct. However, there are people like yourself and Dylan who don't like to work. On a much larger scale, people who believe that once they're 65, they shouldn't have to work anymore. So you're going to run into this issue of people are going to want to stop working, and eventually your group of people who are greater than 65 is way too big.
So then, now my next question is, in reaction, is there like a socialist ideal of, okay, once you're 65, you're out of the economy, and it's the economy's job to adapt by replacing as many workers as possible to make it sustainable, so that there's always a supply of people under 60 who have to work, but once you're over 60, your new means that aren't being supported by your labor is now being supported by more automation? Or does that just not happen and everybody just kind of gives up?
I think in kind of the 10-year period that I've identified as like between 2030 and 2040, when governments tried to get things under control, I'm sure there were definitely talks and arguments about kind of trying to institute a more general socialism. But I think the overwhelming nature of like, okay, well, eventually you're going to have the population above 60 is going to be growing so rapidly. They'll still be young enough to continue to have children. That, I guess, wouldn't be too big of a deal. But you're going to start running out of land and other resources like that. So I think it probably wouldn't have caught on enough and become mainstream enough in order to be implemented before things really started falling apart.
Gotcha.
It happened.
Were there any counter forces of people who are 25-year-old bodied but are like older than the killing age and bind together with their life experience and wisdom to fight against the people who wish to kill them? I feel like there would be a substantial group of people doing that, attempting to at least.
Eventually there would be. I mean, that's kind of what the remaining communities are. It's people who are like you and I. Like in 2042, we would all be above the age of 40.
I mean, also, if you think about it objectively, as long like the cons of old age are your body fails and your mind fails, and assuming those things aren't happening, it would be way more advantageous to have an ancient civilization of people than to have a continually youthful civilization.
Yeah, I was gonna say, why not just
I
force
agree, which is why I
sterilization?
mentioned in the last slide.
Forced sterilization.
I think it was the last slide. Some older folks would certainly be kept around for their wisdom to continue to advise their communities.
Why not all the old people? I believe that there would be communities that would, like, if I were designing a civilization, I would say there would be full communities that would just agree to become celibate and just, or at least, vasectomy or whatever, and then just live in their own community just forever.
Yes,
right?
There probably would be those communities for sure. But I think there are plenty of people who value the ability to create a family that wouldn't completely go away.
Yeah. I have my scores. Austin, do you have your scores?
I was also gonna ask, like, why not?
Max, you should also put a total at the bottom just for ease.
Yeah, I got it now. I was gonna ask, like, what was wrong with forced sterilization? Was there a reason? Did you already cover that? If you did, that's fine.
I did mention forced sterilization. What about it?
Just why that wasn't like the go-to rather than doing like a randomized killing thing.
Because again, people like to have
They like to have kids. Well, okay.
Yeah, they do.
All right, that's fine. Okay, that's good.
All right, final score is 84 out of 100.
Woohoo!
Yeah. Only reason I took points off for mine. Only one was it one slide with picture.
There were
two
a
pictures.
graph
Oh, there
and-
were a couple. There were a
There
couple.
were two.
Most of the slides did not have a picture, and it was delivered kind of slow. I felt like a iPad baby without an iPad.
Did my meme contribute
Well,
to that?
I'm sorry, iPad.
Maybe you should medicate instead of blaming Brian.
I am medicated, and that makes me more.
Imagine a
Yeah.
teacher giving feedback on an assignment. Listen, your delivery made me feel like I was attention deprived. Okay, I needed more. I needed more dopamine.
I needed more engagement.
Like you're a grad student giving a college research paper.
Yeah,
Of course, it's gonna be boring.
My request for next time is to put Subway Surfers on the side,
Yes.
and then to give you some positive feedback as well. I really do love the premise. It's a very fun premise.
Yeah, I thought it was good. I didn't have enough time
Yeah.
to like
There,
fully flesh out the idea, the story, and then also like pictures and other crap. I just didn't have the time to do it.
Thanks for watching. Go ahead and give us ideas on what we should do next.